All right. Hello, my name is Chris Williams, and I do baptistry ministry at Trinity Valley in Athens, Texas. And this is Kevin, and he is on the baptistry ministry at South Dallas.
What's good?
And this is Shay with us here today, and he does campus outreach, working with college students at UNT. And so today, the three of us are here today just to really share about the need for really diverse backgrounds in college ministry and kind of what support raising in those contexts looks like. And so we really just want to get into the nitty-gritty about what does it look like spiritually to kind of go through that process as a minority, especially in the African-American context. What does it look like to kind of raise that support practically? What does it look like to make the ask? And also kind of what are some things that we turn to when we maybe have some struggles in that area? And so, so we'll get started today. Guys, our first question today is really just what was your family's reaction when you told them that you were going to be fundraising your own salary? And so what did that look like for you?
Transparently, I still don't think my family knows what I do, like all the way. They kind of have an idea of what I do, but they don't really know. What I will say is they were supportive. I think growing up in the African-American context or the Black context, there wasn't a lot of missionaries or a lot of people who raised support, especially to do ministry on a college campus. And so they weren't very familiar with what I was doing, but they knew I was trying to share the gospel. And so they applauded me in that. I wouldn't necessarily say my family is Christians. I would say more so cultural Christians, but at the same time, they were receptive to me deciding to go on staff with ministry. I remember having aunts telling me they always knew I was going to be a preacher and things like that.
Yeah.
But
you got it in you.
I think my family was a little bit surprised. Honestly, what was more like prevalent was letting other dreams die. You know what I'm saying? Like, I thought that I was gonna like lobby on Capitol Hill or do something that I can show as an example to my siblings, but the Lord called me to do something different, which was to do college ministry. And so I had to deal a lot with like internal expectation more so than family expectation. I think me going to college and everything else would have made me successful, like, to my parents. So I didn't deal with a lot of like expectations from them. It was more so internal expectation to be successful. And when I decided to go on staff with campus outreach, it was a leap of faith, trusting that, the best way to make an impact is eternally. And so I had to wrestle with a lot of pressure for myself, not as much from my family, although they were supportive.
Yeah. God gave you a big dream, so you had to let some little dreams go in the process.
Somebody.
Shoot.
That's good.
Yeah, that's crazy, bro.
Right.
Yeah.
True.
Man, family. The first person I told that I was going to be support raising was my mama.
What'd she say?
She was not happy.
Okay.
She was not happy. Because here's the thing. I went to school to go into ministry, right? I knew that's what I was going to do. And from the jump, her thing for me was do something else on the side so you can make some money, because otherwise you ain't gonna make no money. If you don't make no money, you ain't gonna have no wife. That was her little speech. So not only am I going into full-time ministry, but also I'm raising support to do it. And so that was just like, hey, yo. So man, it was a struggle early on. I think overall with family, I, like you said, Che, with the supportive but not fully understanding, like my grandmother to this day, she asked me, how the youth doing? And, are you preaching? And I'm like, yes, grandma, I'm preaching. And so, but overall it's good. And, eventually, I don't know if I'm getting ahead of, the conversation, but, with my mom being the main one, for quite a bit, not as, I wouldn't say not supportive, just fearful, and, I kind of get that, I'm her baby. She wants me to be, successful, whatever that looks like to her. And so, but I remember even, a couple years in, she said, you know what, I'm so glad you didn't listen to me, because I could see the joy wrapped on your face, and that's making a big difference to me. So, for her, even though it was a journey, but even eventually she came around, and now my parents support me financially. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Praise God.
What about you, Chris?
Yeah.
I think I was really blessed. Both my parents were pretty much on board right away. Now my dad was way more on board than my mom. He's always been like, "Yes, son, just if the Lord's calling you to do it, go do it. Just make sure you call us and tell us how you're doing in the middle of it." But my dad was always on board. But my mom was just a little bit more afraid, like you were saying. Just how moms are.
I think that's just what mom was like,
Yeah.
man. Yeah.
She's like, man, how are you gonna make money and how are you gonna support yourself? But it took a while, but eventually she came around, and that's kind of our next question. And Kev, you already kind of got into it, but yeah, really just kind of. Did your parents come around to it, and really, what did that look like? And maybe kind of was that like how long did that take for them to kind of come around to the idea of you doing ministry full time?
Sure. I think for me, my parents were supportive, as I said, and so it didn't take them long to get around to it. I also just think the bar for success in my family was like, as long as you're staying out of trouble and you're making money in an honest way, you're doing well. And so whenever I told my mom I was going on staff with Campus Outreach and I asked if we could have a support meeting, she was eager to have one, and she listened to my pitch and she decided to support me, and my grandmother decided to support me, and my aunts decided to support me. And so I'm super grateful for that experience because it was almost like a pat on the shoulder from God. Like, the work that you're beginning to do is one that I've called you to do. And so that was super encouraging, especially in light of how many times I was rejected throughout raising support. Those moments of my parents and my family just embracing me and saying, hey, I do support what you're doing. It was super comforting, and the Lord used that as a sort of Ebenezer, something that I could be reminded of as I'm raising support.
Man, look at God, bro.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah. And so, Kev, I know you talked a little about your experience already, but yeah, you want to speak more into that?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it took my mom a little longer to come around, the curve, but she did. And just like your pops, my dad was, supportive from the jump, same type thing, whatever the Lord's speaking into you to do, go ahead and do that. And so, even though I would have preferred from the jump for both of them to be, fully in, and, I say that it was hard for my mom, but it wasn't like my mom didn't want me to do ministry.
Okay,
you know what I mean? And so even in that process of her coming around to support raising, she still cared. Like, she showed care for how things were going. And so even that was helpful. And then eventually, like I said, her coming around to the full thing. But I mean, I share this. This is also just it was a long process. I think that was part of it too. I recently became full-time, in, doing work and being fully support raised. So I think even like that's a huge blessing and win for me, but I think even for like my parents to see that, like, God saw me through and he's been taking care of me, and he's been providing that, I ain't missed a meal, anything like that. I've been able to pay bills. It's been solid.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
I think as I look back at my parents' experience and my family's kind of really coming to accept this role that the Lord's called me to, it's really cool been seeing my parents transition to that acceptance. I remember at first my mom was kind of apprehensive. She's wondering, like, what are you doing every day? And but at some point she started following our Instagram on the BSM, and she's like our main I guess like she interacts with our BSM. Yeah, she likes all our posts, and she's like embarrassing me and she's like calling on them. And I'm like, Mom, I didn't even see this. Like, what in the world? Like, how did you? So, anyways, so she's found.
They're like, that's my baby.
Yep, pretty much. And so, anyway, so it's been really sweet to see her come around and really just be a part of that. But I say that jokingly, but like in a real way, like it really has blessed my family because they get to see, okay, like this is what we do, like this is why we do it, and it's really helped them to see that there is a purpose to this, and it's the kingdom. And so, anyways, that's been a blessing. But I guess we'll shift the conversation a little bit. What are some specific maybe ministry partner development barriers? We talk about ministry partner development, kind of raising support. What are some barriers in the Black church that maybe are maybe uniquely specific, or maybe specific to other churches or groups or people groups as well? But
go ahead. Can I go?
It sounds like,
bro, yeah. Cause I've interacted with this and I thought about it a lot. Let me say this first and foremost: the Black church, we generous. The Black church is very generous. All right. So from my perspective, the issue I don't think has been will the Black church give, or will will people give to me or to the BSM? I think it's been a issue of understanding the need and the scope of the need. Because I know you were talking earlier about, growing up in a context where, you didn't see churches or Black churches sending a lot of missionaries. And I grew up in a context where I saw quite a few that did. But what they did was the church basically just adopted the missionary totally. Like they made sure that the missionary had everything he or she needed financially and otherwise.
Wow.
And so there wasn't necessarily, is what I'm saying. Like they give, you know what I mean? But it was more of like, hey, we're gonna do a campaign for this person to make sure that they have all of it. And so I think the idea of someone asking for, a monthly financial gift is a little strange in a lot of Black churches. Also, I think tied, pretty, well with that is the concept of tithing, because I think, again, that's a very strong concept in the Black church for people like individuals and families. But when I came to, Black people in the church and asked for them to, join my support team, I got a lot of one-time gifts. I got a lot of like big yearly gifts because in their mind, it's like, okay, he's asking for just like this one-time thing. And so what I had to start framing it was in the context of just like your tithe is for the ministry of the church, you can give a gift like a tithe to this ministry and to me so that I can do ministry where I'm at on the college campus. And I think that helped people understand, oh, this is ongoing and this is, a constant need. I don't know, did you see anything like that?
Right. Yeah, I think I'm glad you speak into that really strong giving culture that's already there.
Yeah.
And maybe how can we, help our church see that this is a part of that culture, like giving to missions on college campuses. And I think in my church, my personal experience, my church was mostly Black growing up. When I made that ask to my church, I asked for, I think, a specific percentage to my pastor. We just kind of sat down and talked about it. And I kind of phrased it in terms that was, that we had kind of talked about in church growing up and kind of that faithful giving. And so that's not to say that there's a, one size fits all whenever you make the ask, but I think it really did help about kind of really looking into that culture that's already established and saying, like, helping them to see, hey, like, this is a part of that giving. You can come alongside me and support me. And I was blessed because I was the first, I think really at least the first missionary on a college campus and really the first kind of missionary regionally that we sent somewhere. And so they got to support me in a larger way than I thought.
I had to deal with pushback in the sense of, well, you have a college degree, and because you have a college degree, where you work ought to pay you. Like, son, understand your value. Like you need to recognize your value and maybe work at a different job. I had people give me advice instead of give me support. Instead of choose to support. And so there was the barrier of how people see missions. And that's not all churches. That was just the church that I had experienced. And then with other places, one of the barriers was, why would I sow a seed into a place where I'm not at? Or a place where like I'm not a part of. And with campus outreach, particularly, every campus outreach is under the authority of a local church. Right. And so every time I said that to like this representative from a church, the question would immediately become, well, why doesn't that church support you?
Yeah.
And I would talk about how people from the church do support me, but if the church tried to support 8 missionaries, then they wouldn't be in business, or they wouldn't be able to do the work God has called them to do. They wouldn't be able to pay the pastoral staff. And so I saw just a reluctancy to support because they didn't know, like it wasn't being brought back directly to the church. One time I had a support meeting with a pastor and he directly recruited me to come on staff with his church.
Yeah.
He was like, yeah, man, if you came over here, like this wouldn't even be an issue. Like this wouldn't be a problem. Not understanding that I'm on staff with the organization called Campus Outreach that's under the authority of a local church. And so personally, man, it was how Black churches have historically seen missions. And it makes sense, but I think we're getting to a place in which the Black church is seeing the need for the gospel going forth on places like college campuses where it spreads like a wildfire. But I think that's just like a work in process or a work in progress. And I saw some difficulties in the sense of, okay, why are you doing missions in this way? Why isn't this place paying you? And this isn't directly impacting our church. And so it's hard to consider giving a large monthly donation whenever I don't know where this is going.
Yeah.
And so personally, raising support was extremely hard because I grew up in a Black context. And so to not garner support there really put me in a position to trust the Lord. And I'm honestly still in that place.
Yeah. I think I want to kind of move towards more the practical side of what did that support look like for you? And so maybe just practically, what did it look like for you to maybe ask a supporter, to maybe make a phone call, or to maybe kind of make that support ask to your supporters in that community? And
I feel like a lot of it is being able to read people, asking yourself or figuring out early on, like, what type of energy are they giving towards this conversation? What is it in a sense that they want to, like, what are they geared towards? What do they want to hear about? Should I share my testimony, or should I share like the vision, or should I just tell them the need? Like, where do I need to go in this conversation? What angle should I go at this in to help them understand what it is that I'm doing and help them see a vision for potentially supporting me? And so asking typically looks like having a conversation with them, and after having that having a conversation about how they're doing, how I'm doing, what I'm up to, I'm then able to use language that we talked about before to sort of give them vision for what it is that I'm doing. And honesty is the best policy. I never do a support pitch without asking for a certain amount or without letting them know my need. And so every support meeting, you can expect that to happen. Sometimes there's a need for me to pull out like a slideshow and show that. But I had a support meeting with a pastor last week at his barbecue restaurant, and a Black pastor, and he was like, "Man, just tell me about you. I just want to hear about you." And so I'm telling him what I'm up to, and I'm telling him about me. And he is eager to support. And so I think being aware of who you're talking to and figuring out what sort of circumstance they're in is super important as you're thinking about raising support. So I think if you're raising support amongst Black churches, you might want to understand their mission statement. You might want to understand some of the ways in which they see the gospel going forth and what ways they're putting their hand towards that. And then talking about how what you're doing directly applies to that. Talking about how the campus is a place where students aren't staying. They're not staying in this city. They're going back. They're going to be faithful members of local churches. They're going to be fathers and mothers one day. They're going to be in the marketplace one day. We want to see the gospel go forth. And so support me to be, as I'm the hands and feet on the campus, so that the gospel will go forth to the world, you know? So you're just, I'm consistently trying to figure out, okay, how is this person wired?
Man, I agree with so much of what you said, because I've seen the same things just in my conversations with folk. And, you know, I think, because I know a lot of people from other cultural backgrounds, you know, they talk about, oh yeah, you know, I need 2 hours, 3 hours to talk with people. And, you know, from my experience, a lot of times people are like, just tell what you need, you know, they like, it could be 2 hours. It could be 10 minutes, like straight up. I think, again, going back to what I was talking about earlier, just that kind of giving nature, you know, and of course not everyone has it to give, but when you were talking about people want to hear about me, you know, hear about you, hear about your story, what God's doing through you, you know, even if they don't necessarily understand campus ministry, they understand ministry and what a calling to ministry means and how significant that is in, you know, a young man or a young woman's life. And so for me, I think within the Black community, people, again, even if they don't understand what it means to be a campus missionary, they get calling. And, you know, our community historically has been supportive of ministry callings and raising up, you know, ministry leaders. Maybe sometimes a little too much, but like it's there, entrenched in our culture. And so for me, I think just being able to share, you know, my heart and what I want to see happen on the college campus that I work on is enough for people to jump in. I think I spoke a lot into that relational aspect of it, of how we're not just speaking to another potential supporter, but really
human being who needs to either know the Lord if they don't know him, right? Or needs to be encouraged to grow in their faith as well. And maybe you can be a part of that. Maybe you can help them to have a prayer opportunity to come alongside you as a partner in prayer and get to see the mission field. And I think I got to see that happen a lot, especially during my support raising. So that's a really good, that relational aspect of it. Yeah, but okay. So finally, kind of the last question here. Really, just what advice would you give another someone, especially from the Black community, to go into support raising if they sign up for support and or sign up for MPD? Like, what would you give them going into that?
Yeah, sorry, I have a lot of thoughts on that too. Just because I know what it's like to think as a support raiser who is Black.
Yeah,
you know, because you know, I don't know if you got this pep talk from your parents or family members, but you going to college and like, yeah, you're going to college so you can be better. You can be better than I was, and so there's this expectation that you're gonna go and you're gonna instantly just go get a just incredible job and you go live in like downtown Dallas or whatever, and but to transition from sort of that implicit or explicit expectation, not only from the outside but really internally, I think support raisers who are Black need to know, man, success from your perspective isn't necessarily God's definition of success. God's definition of success is faithfulness.
Come on.
And obedience.
Yeah.
And sometimes that means us stepping into things that are uncomfortable, stepping into things that aren't going to be immediate.
Take us somewhere past
so we need to be aware of those things stepping in, and also be prepared to really sit in the process. Support raising takes a minute, man. So and again, that expectation of then going to school and applying for internships and getting a job, like for those things to happen instantaneously, and it doesn't necessarily work out that way really for any pathway you're pursuing in the Lord's will, but especially in this line of work.
For sure.
So man, just being aware of that and staying prayed up in the process throughout.
I love that you said that, because immediately I thought about Matthew chapter 9 verses 36 through 38. When Jesus saw the crowd, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, plentiful is the harvest, but few are the laborers. Pray to the Lord of the harvest that he would send out his workers or his laborers into the harvest field. And so I definitely think create a trust God list. That'd be my challenge for everybody. Create a trust God list and write down the names of the people that you're expecting to come on your support team, the names of the churches, and ask the Lord to do that. Before you hop into a conversation, before you start that list of conversations that you have, create a trust God list. Another thing, be diligent. Create a tracker, have a Excel sheet. I use an Excel sheet, and write down the names of the people you're expecting to support and write out where they are. Okay, do you need to follow up on a conversation? You need to write that. Okay, did they say that they were going to get back to you on Monday? All right, well, you need to write that. How much did you ask them for? What are you trusting God would provide as they're considering coming on your support team?
That's good.
You need a trust God list. You need to keep track of who you're having conversations with. Another thing in support raising, dream big.
Absolutely.
Dream big. Reach out to people. Do not be afraid to ask. And I love something that I think Becca said earlier. She was on the video before this one. It was the whole idea of not being realizing that you're not asking people for, you're not just asking for something, but what you're doing is inviting them into being on a team where the gospel is going forth. You're not begging anyone for anything, but you're inviting them into being a part of what God is already going to do, because he's prepared good works beforehand that we would walk into them. And so we can trust that in the end, if the Lord called us to it, he's going to bring it to a completion. We can trust that God is sovereign, that he'll provide. And so in that, we can have confidence in our conversations, and we can speak with clarity and conviction.
Preach, bro.
And confidence.
Yeah.
And so I just want to encourage anybody, hey, create a trust God list, be diligent, and know that the God who parted the seas has sent you to do this work. That's why he says in Matthew 28, and I will be with you wherever you go, even to the ends of the earth.
Yeah.
And so we can do that in faith and in confidence, trusting the Lord.
Yeah. I think one more verse I think of when I think of provision, Romans 8:32, God who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not along with him also graciously give us all things? And I think that's a spiritual sense, right? He helps us to follow him, but also in a support raising sense, we can trust that if this is the Lord's will, which we know it is for us to be reaching these campuses, that God has provided the means already in other people that he will reveal to us in time. And so thank you all, men, for being here today. It's been so good being with y'all. Always love being with y'all.
Appreciate you, Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.